Hi, my name is Rodolfo Luthe-Rios. I am from Mexico. I am the director of Grupo Luthe, a family-owned business specializing in small and medium businesses. I have almost 40 years of experience working with IT, information systems, process improvement in small and medium businesses. I have been working also with cloud computing since 2012. And let me switch to the presentation. Based on my experience, we have seen that small and medium businesses have difficult adopting new technologies. So this research is on a review on adoption models of technology and the barrier on businesses. We'll have the introduction, then the methodology that we follow, the conclusions, we have also the references. So why this research? So as I mentioned, I work with small, medium businesses, and everybody knows the importance for the economy, for the country, for the regions. They represent 99.5% of businesses, 60% of employment, but they face key challenges. The Paddy Business School says that few survive 10 or more years to be considered a business. So there's a high rate of failure. Everybody knows that for any company, implementing IT is important, competitive, advantages, but especially with SMBs, the information technology is almost always disconnected from the business. So you can change any information technology because it's separated from the business. Few SMBs will mention that IT is part of their abilities or what makes them more competitive. There are also adoption barriers. For example, SMBs are limited in resources. Usually, it's difficult to access funding, and you have to pay with your cash flow. So you're limited in the projects, in the scope, and in the timelines. And also, most SMBs lack IT experience within the company. So adopting new IT technologies is difficult for an SMB. So this research focuses then on which adoption models exist, which barriers exist that hinder the adoption of information technologies in SMBs. Now, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean, what's the context for SMBs? Well, as we mentioned, worldwide, 99.5% of businesses are SMBs. It's the same in Latin America and the Caribbean. They generate 60% of formal productive employment. INEGI in Mexico states that 99.8% of the establishments are either micro, small, or medium, or as we know them in Spanish, pymes, pequeña y mediana empresa. I am based in Guadalajara, Jalisco, and the Institute of Economic Studies of Guadalajara states that 70% of Jalisco's GDP, gross domestic product, is contributed by SMBs. So you can see that SMBs play a critical economic role everywhere. They're the primary employers. They're the source of development. And they do have a regional impact. So that's why we're focusing on SMBs, especially in the context of Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay, in our research, we found that there are theories for adoption, and we will see that they are divided either at the organizational or the individual level. When can we say that technology is adopted? Well, with its initial use or the acceptance of this new technology or system. So when there was, like, why is it difficult for the adoption of technology of information? Models, theories started being developed. And as it was being researched, they found that there were three main factors: organizational, technological, and environmental. So then we have some theories or models that were defined. We can see on the right the timeline. So we have the theory of reason action, 1975. It based what were the intentions on the behavior of the individuals. Then in 85, we have the theory of planned behavior, which adds behavioral control to the theory of reasoned action. But it was not being sufficient. So in 1989, there's a new technology acceptance model, or TAM, which focuses on what was the perceived usefulness for the users and the ease of use to predict the adoption of the technology. In 1990, the Technology of Organization Environment, or TOE, considers these factors: technological, organizational, and environmental. Then in 2003, we have the innovation diffusion theory that says that how are users going to be affected by these innovations characteristics. And in 2003, we have the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, or UTAUT, which integrates models for user acceptance. So in the middle, we can have this separation of organizational and individual theories. We have in bold letters TAM, TOE, and UTAUT, because we will be working with those. So the technology acceptance model, or TAM, was developed by Davis in 1989 to predict user acceptance. It was based on TRA and TVP, as we mentioned. Why did Davis develop this technology model? Well, because prediction was not working on adopting new information technologies. So he worked with core constructs. It starts with a user perceiving the usefulness of a new technology. For example, how we will enhance his job performance. That also goes then to how does the user perceive the ease of use? For example, less work required, minimal effort. So that's going to lead to a behavioral intention, and finally to the usage behavior. It's widely used in information systems research. It has practical insights, but it has some limitations. It ignores, for example, social influences and external factors. So a user may be well disposed to use technology, but maybe at the business, the rest of the users are not going to use the technology or not going to approve, or you have external factors like there was not enough funding. So it centers on the user, but it has limitations because it doesn't see the other factors. In 1990, Tornatsky and Fleischer developed the technology organizational environment. It had to do with the adoption of innovation in the organizations. So they defined three critical contexts: technology, organization, and environmental. So the technological characteristics are going to be the characteristics of the technology itself. For example, is it going to be compatible with what we have? Do we have infrastructure? The organization context specifies the size of the company. Is it local? Is it global? Is it national? The structure. Do we have structures to adopt the new technology? Do we have capabilities to adopt these new technologies? Resources? Can we access training, funding? And environmental context. For example, is the competition ahead of us? Is the competition implementing new technologies? The government regulations, do we have to implement a new system because we have to report something, we have to control something? And also the support, for example, are there government incentives or financing? So it's more complete, provides a holistic view because you can see the internal and external factors, how they influence, but also it has some limitations. It's not a fully integrated theory. And as it's so broad, not context specific, it has its challenges when you want to adopt it to a specific case. Finally, we have the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, or the UTAUT, which was developed in 2003 by Venkatesh and others to explain the acceptance and usage. So it identifies key factors, which we have seen previously. For example, the performance expectancy that the new technology will have. The effort expectancy. Is it going to be difficult to adopt? The social influence, we had also mentioned it, like the other users, what are they saying? Do they adopt it? They are against it? And also the facilitating conditions. Are we going to be trained? Are we going to have new platforms, new equipment? But it also identifies that there are moderators, because similar performance expectations, effort expectancy, social influence, facilitating conditions show that in different companies with these same key factors, the adoption was different. So they added the moderators like age, gender, experience, and voluntariness of adopting the new technologies. So it's still primarily on the individual level. It can be adapted to organizations, but it has limitations. One is that how can you measure these moderators, like for a study? So what was the difference between age, gender, experience, voluntariness between companies to see why similar key factors had different acceptance of the technology? And also it's widely used like in the initial, the project, initial stages, but in the practice is not underutilized. So it's there's few reports of applying it to the project. So as you can see, there's not a single model that can address all that we need. So the idea of combining models is going to help to address the limitations and gather the strengths of more than one model. For example, Tong-Suk Tsai combined the TOW at the organizational level plus the UTAUT at the individual level. So you have an integrated framework. So this is going to give us a holistic view, more complete than the other ones. So we can cover more dimensions that a single model alone is not able to address. Now, on the adoption barriers, let's say the models are fine, but why is it that the small, medium businesses struggle more than large companies when implementing new technologies? For example, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things. So, well, looking for barriers, we're also going to categorize them by the TOW framework, and then we're going to have them by the organization framework. So we have internal factors, technology, the characteristics of the technology itself, and the environment, what are the external factors. So we have mentioned, for example, an organization has to do with size, the structure, the resources, and for example, the management support within the organization is critical. When the technology, is it compatible with what we would have? Is it complex? Is it relevant with what we have? Is it relevant for adoption? And we mentioned on the environment, like the location, the competition, and government support. Studying the barriers, we find that the organizational drivers predominantly are the ones that influence adoption. It's not like the technology environment are not also important, but the organizationals are like the most important. So looking for barriers, we detected that on the organization context, we have management support, preparedness, project champion, the organizational changes that are needed to implement the new technologies, changing people's minds, the organization structure, the strategic vision, the size of the company, access to financial resources, hesitation when it comes, for example, to adopt artificial intelligence or another technology like cloud computing, And also that you're going to require employees with specific digital skills. The technology, well, the adoption barrier will be the infrastructure, and in the environment, the competition, external IT support, government financing, information technology skills, and people in favor of adopting versus people against adopting. So I just go in detail of just quick of a few of these. Management support. If you don't have management support, the project is likely to fail. And even with management support, depends on how the management supports the project, because it happens that during the project, management might try to rush things, skip best practices, and so on. A project champion is vital for the project because the project cannot work by itself. You need someone within the company that knows the company, the risks, the processes, how do they operate, so it can champion throughout different areas the whole project. Or the size. It's not the same to implement in a small, medium business that has 5 users in one location to a medium company that has, I don't know, 20, 30 users per place. So you could have like 3, 4 places where they have presence with 20, 30 users. So for example, if you are going to show the new technology, see the changes, it's not the same. And usually when you implement these new technologies, users will need training. So they're going to need new digital skills. Just go back and think when you started using computers, you had to learn to use a computer or new programs or new abilities. And also the competition is interesting because sometimes companies look at other competitor and see what technology they adopted, and they ask for the same technology without knowing why they chose those technology. What were the barriers? Was it difficult? Were they successful in implementing it? And also people in favor of adopting versus people against adopting. Sometimes within the company, you're going to have people that want to adopt the new technology and people that say that you should not adopt the new technology. So there's going to be resistance to change and to the new technology. So all of these barriers affect how you implement technology. The methodology that we follow was last year in autumn 2024. So we started searching in Google Scholar and IEEE Explore for technology adoption models, technology adoption barriers, specifically for small, medium businesses or small, medium enterprises. Depends on how do you define the company. We were also searching for publications from 2020 onwards, focused on SMBs or SMEs that were also models or barriers, and that they had been cited between 2020 and 2024. And with some of the, with the documents that we found, we also did a follow-up on these authors if they were cited elsewhere. So finally, we selected 15 articles. So, or the funnel, you can see that we had the multiple hits, we filtered the results, we looked for the articles that were eligible, and we finished with 15 articles. Our key findings were that we were focusing on information technology adoption models, the technology barriers, on the context of SMBs and SMEs, and publications between 2020 and 2024. But we identified a huge gap is that we did not find studies that specifically addressed Mexico or Latin America and the Caribbean economies. So all of the articles were worldwide, Europe, other places, or even medium companies. So we found that gap. Our conclusions were that there are persistent barriers that consistently impact both organizational structures and individual actors, and this hinders the adoption process. Also, that no one size fits all. So we saw many models, organizational, user. So not a single model can fully capture the complexity of adoption. Multiple perspectives are needed. And maybe so more in small, medium businesses, because they're more complex. They're less structured than a big company. So we need an integrated perspective. So when we combine the organizational and individual viewpoints, it's going to give us a more comprehensive understanding of these dynamics on the adoption of technologies. So we should be looking at a holistic evaluation, assessing the technological, the organizational, and environmental factors, all of them together, plus the individual. Then we're going to get a well-rounded view of the adoption landscape. So we concluded that the future research direction should explore the best combination of models tailored to the unique needs of small and medium businesses in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. You're going to find the references in the journal, and also we had some support from the Jesuit in Mexico, and also the ITESO, which is the Jesuit University of Guadalajara, for this research. Thank you very much for your attention.